My grandmother slid a deed to a $150 million hotel across my birthday dinner table. My husband looked up from his phone for the first time all night. By the time we got home, he'd already decided it was his. He had exactly 15 minutes to reconsider. My mother-in-law called me somewhat presentable before the appetizers arrived. She said it the way you note weather. Not unkindly exactly, just accurately, from the perspective of someone who considers accuracy a form of generosity. She was looking at my dress when she said it. The navy one I had spent 40 minutes choosing because it was Julian's favorite, and because I had learned, across 3 years of these dinners, that preparation was the closest thing to armor I had access to, somewhat presentable. Like a room that's been cleaned but not decorated, like a candidate who met the minimum requirements. Julian, across the table, chuckled without looking up from his phone. That was the birthday dinner for my 27th year. That was the room I was sitting in when my grandmother Vivian placed a burgundy leather portfolio on the white tablecloth and slid it toward me with the specific calm of someone who has been waiting for exactly this moment and has prepared for it with the patience of a person who understands that timing is the difference between a gift and a weapon. I want to tell you about the portfolio before I tell you what was inside it, because the portfolio itself was a statement. Burgundy leather, monogrammed in gold at the corner. Not my initials, which would have been sentimental, but the initials of the law firm that had prepared the documents inside, which was pragmatic. And Vivian has always been pragmatic above everything else. I opened it. Property deeds, ownership transfer documents, a certificate of appraisal dated 4 days prior, and at the top of the cover sheet, in bold capital letters that my eyes read and then reread because my brain required the confirmation, the Vance Grand Hotel. It was appraised last week at $150 million, Vivian said. Her voice had its usual quality. Warm on the surface, steel the whole way through, like something elegant over something that does not yield. As of 4 o'clock today, it is entirely yours. The table went quiet. I mean that in the full physical sense. Not the polite quiet of a conversation pausing. The specific total quiet of a room in which everyone has simultaneously stopped doing what they were doing because something has arrived that the room doesn't know how to contain yet. Constance's smile, the one she had been wearing all evening, the practiced warmth of a woman performing graciousness for an audience, evaporated, not gradually, all at once, the way a flame goes out. Julian lowered his phone. For the first time all evening, he looked at me, not at the portfolio, not at Vivian, at me, with the specific quality of attention that I had spent 3 years wanting from him, and that I now understood, in the specific clarity of that restaurant moment, I should never have wanted, because what was in his eyes was not love or recognition or the warmth of a man looking at his wife on her birthday. It was calculation, the look of a starving wolf regarding a vault. Let me tell you who I was before I tell you who I became, because this story requires both. My name is Harper Vance. I am 27 years old. I was born in Chicago, grew up in a house that was not wealthy but was full of the specific textures of a life built by people who worked for what they had and who valued the having accordingly. My mother had been a librarian. My father had managed a small packaging company. They had both died within 14 months of each other when I was 20, which is the kind of grief that arrives before you are fully formed and shapes the person you become instead of the person you thought you would be. I had been raised partially by my grandmother Vivian. Vivian Vance is 74 years old and has the specific quality of presence that belongs to people who have spent decades being underestimated and who have found in that underestimation a very efficient kind of freedom. She built the Vance Grand Hotel in 1989 with money she had saved across 15 years of working in real estate management, starting as a clerical assistant and ending as a regional director, and she had expanded it and managed it and turned it into something that bore her name and her decisions at every level. She had never been married. She had never needed to be. She had raised me, in the years after my parents died, with the specific attention of someone who has decided that a person's character is more important than their circumstances, and who has organized her mentorship accordingly. She also had, I discovered at my birthday dinner, been watching my marriage. I had met Julian Sterling at 23, at a benefit event for a children's literacy organization that I had volunteered for, and that Julian had attended, because his family were donors and attendance was expected of him. He was handsome, educated, and possessed of the specific magnetic confidence of a man who has always been at the center of whatever room he enters, and who has taken the center as his natural state rather than an achievement. We were married 11 months later. Vivian had attended the wedding. She had given a toast that was warm and specific, and that contained, I understood only in retrospect, a single sentence that was not warm, but was very specific. Harper has always known her own mind. I trust she always will. I had not known my own mind. Not about this. Not yet. Julian's mother, Constance Sterling, is 61, sharp-featured, and possessed of the social authority of a woman who has organized her entire identity around the question of who belongs in which rooms and who is responsible for policing the boundaries. She is not cruel in the obvious sense. She is precise in the way that a scalpel is precise. She finds the exact right place to cut, and she cuts there, cleanly, and she expects the wound to be managed quietly. She had been managing me for 3 years. The first year I had been trying to earn her approval, which I now understand is the specific mistake that intelligent women make when they encounter a system that has been designed to ensure approval is never fully granted, because the withholding is what produces the labor. The second year I had been trying to to reduce the friction. Smaller, quieter, taking up less space, arranging dinners that were commented on minimally, and presiding over a household that was observed with the specific dissatisfaction of someone who has decided the decor is adequate but not inspired. The third year, I had simply been trying to survive it. I arranged flowers, as Julian would later say at my birthday dinner. I planned menus. I managed the household with the invisible efficiency of someone who has learned that the work disappearing is the measure of its success. 3 years of this. 3 years of somewhat presentable. And Julian's chuckle and the phone that was more interesting than my face across the dinner table. And then the burgundy portfolio. And the calculation in my husband's eyes. The drive home was silent and arctic. Not uncomfortable silent. The specific silence of a car in which two people have decided, independently, that the conversation they are about to have is better had in a room where the options are clearer. Julian drove. I held the portfolio in my lap. Constance, who had insisted on accompanying us because she had things to discuss, sat in the back seat with the posture of someone organizing her argument. The house. This is the second thing I need to tell you about before the rest can make sense. The house on Lakeshore was not Julian's. I had not known this until Vivian's attorney had presented the documentation that evening, alongside the hotel deed, which I had not yet had time to process because the hotel deed alone was sufficient processing for one evening. The house was held in a trust, the Vance Family Trust, established by Vivian in 2018, that I was the named beneficiary of. Julian had never been on the deed. The mortgage that Constance believed Julian had been paying, the one she had referred to twice in 3 years as Julian's home, was a liability attached to a property that his name had never appeared on. The company. Sterling Global Imports. Julian's firm, his professional identity, the source of the status that his family wore like armor, had been capitalized with $4 million from a venture Constance had believed to be an angel investor's contribution. The investor had been a blind trust. The blind trust's sole irrevocable beneficiary was me. I had not known any of this until the attorney laid it on the table at the restaurant, in the specific ordered sequence of a man who has been asked to present facts in a particular order for a particular reason. Vivian had been building a structure around me for 3 years, not to trap me, to protect me, to make sure that when I was ready, when I had seen enough, when the calculation in my husband's eyes was finally visible, the ground I stood on was solid. I walked through the front door of my house at 9:17 p.m. Constance moved to the wingback chair with the deliberate efficiency of someone claiming a position. She sat. She arranged herself. She waited until Julian had closed the door behind us and until I had set the portfolio on the entry table and turned to face the room. Tomorrow at 8, she said. Julian assumes managing director of the hotel. I take oversight of the financial ledgers. The transition begins immediately. We'll want to move quickly before the staff forms any impressions about who is actually in charge. She said this the way she said most things, as though the sentence were a document that had already been signed, and she was simply reading from it for the benefit of those who hadn't caught up yet. I looked at her. I thought about somewhat presentable, about 3 years of chuckles, about the way Julian had looked up from his phone. No, I said. Constance blinked. It was the first time I had watched that happen. The specific physical process of a woman whose system does not have a ready response to the word no from a direction that is not supposed to produce it. Excuse me? The hotel belongs to me, I said. Neither of you will step foot on that property. Julian's face went crimson. Not the crimson of embarrassment, the crimson of a man whose rage is a reflex, who has never been required to modulate it in this direction. You don't know the first thing about running a business, he said. You arrange flowers, you plan dinner menus, you have no idea what you're actually dealing with. Then I'll learn, I said. Constance made a sound, a sharp, contemptuous exhale of amusement that she had deployed across 3 years with great efficiency. Listen to the little housewife. You were born to take care of a home, Harper, not run an empire. You lack the spine and the background and frankly the intelligence. Constance, I said. Stop. She stopped. Not because she wanted to, because my voice had a quality in it that I had not deployed before, that she had not heard in 3 years of dinners and holidays and household reviews, and that produced in her the specific pause of something encountering an obstacle it had not prepared for. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. Julian slammed his palm on the glass coffee table. The crack of it filled the room. Sign management control over to me by tomorrow morning, he said, or I'm filing for divorce. I will not be humiliated by a woman who has no idea what she's holding. And pack your bags tonight, Constance snapped. She was on her feet now, which meant she had moved from prepared speech to something less controlled. Get out of my son's house. This is his home. You have no standing here without him. My palms were wet. My heart was doing something that wasn't quite hammering but was working very hard. But my voice, when it came out, was level. You might want to revisit the property records before you finish that sentence, I said. The front door opened. Vivian walked in with 2 men in black suits flanking her. She paused in the entry. She took in Julian's crimson face, Constance's standing fury, my position in the center of the room. She threw her head back and laughed, not the warm laugh she used at family dinners, but a different sound, cold, precise, the sound of someone who has seen the thing she anticipated and finds it exactly as instructive as she expected. How fascinating, she said, moving onto the marble tile with the unhurried ease of someone who has never needed to hurry in her life. You're attempting to remove the landlord from her own castle. Constance's jaw moved. Julian stumbled backward into the sofa, not from fear exactly, exactly, but from the specific physical response of encountering a situation that his confidence had not prepared him for. "This estate belongs to my son," Constance said. "He purchased it. He's been paying the mortgage." The man on Vivian's left opened a black briefcase. He had the bearing of a man who does this for a living and who finds the drama of the room entirely unremarkable compared to the document in his hand. "I am Edward Hargrove," he said, "senior partner at Hargrove, Lynn and Associates, 31 years in property and estate law." He set a document on the entry table beside the portfolio. "This property is legally titled exclusively in the name of Harper Vance. The Vance Family Trust has maintained controlling interest since 2018. The entity known as Sterling Global Imports was capitalized with $4 million provided by the Vance Family Trust, and the controlling shares sit in a blind trust of which Harper Vance is the sole, irrevocable beneficiary. Any attempt to contest these arrangements would require reversing documents that were prepared, witnessed, and filed before your son's engagement." Constance grabbed the fireplace mantle. "No," she said. "No." Julian was looking at his Italian loafers. This is the thing about the Sterling family that I had understood dimly for 3 years, and now understood completely. Their silence was always a confession. Julian had no refutation because there was nothing to refute. He had known, on some level, or had suspected, had chosen not to investigate the foundation of his own professional life because the investigation might have produced an answer he didn't want. Some people prefer the comfortable version of the truth. "You have 15 minutes, I said. "Personal identification, basic clothing, toiletries. Nothing else leaves this house." Julian's eyes went wide. The calculation that had been there since the restaurant was gone. What was there now was something raw. The specific shock of a man who has spent his entire life in rooms that were arranged in his favor, discovering that this particular room is not. "Harper, please," he said. "Please be reasonable. We can discuss this." 14 minutes and 40 seconds, I said. Constance made the sound of a woman experiencing cardiac distress. She pressed her hand to her chest. Her expression arranged itself into the specific configuration of someone performing medical crisis. "My heart," she said. She sank, not fell, sank with the controlled descent of someone who has done theatrical things before and knows how to do them without actually hitting the floor hard. She arranged herself on the Persian rug, one hand to pearls, eyes half closed. Palpitations. No one moved. Edward Hargrove pulled out his phone with the calm efficiency of a man who has prepared for more contingencies than this room currently contains. "I'll dispatch an ambulance," he said. "They can be here in 8 minutes. A pause. "The 15-minute countdown continues. The paramedics can treat you on the sidewalk after the occupancy has been resolved." Constance cracked one eye open. She looked at Hargrove. She looked at Vivian, who was watching her with the specific expression of someone observing a performance they have seen before and find mildly entertaining. She looked at me. Then she got up off the Persian rug with the agility of a woman who had never experienced palpitations in her life, which is exactly what she was. The second man in the black suit, who had not yet spoken and who I later learned was a licensed private security contractor, positioned himself near the hall leading to the bedrooms, not blocking, but present, with the specific quality of presence that communicates that the options in the room have been reduced. Julian packed the way men pack when they are furious and humiliated simultaneously, not methodically, not with the efficiency of someone organizing their situation, but with the grabbing urgency of someone trying to manifest control through the act of moving quickly. He took 2 dress shirts, a suit, his toiletry bag, his passport. He stood in the doorway of the bedroom with a weekend bag that was inadequate for anything except the short term, and he looked at me with the expression of a man who is deciding between several speeches and has not landed on one. He did not deliver a speech. He went back to the entry hall. Constance had packed with somewhat more efficiency. She had a travel bag that appeared to have been in the guest room already, which told me something about the degree to which she had anticipated this evening going, in a direction that might require her presence to be removed, or perhaps she simply traveled prepared. With Constance, preparation was indistinguishable from preemption. At 10:23 p.m., I stood in the doorway of my house and watched them pull 2 hastily packed suitcases down the front steps and toward the car that Julian had hauled. Not his car, I noted, but a hired car, which suggested that the question of the vehicles was also something Hargrove had anticipated. The door clicked shut. Vivian appeared beside me. She did not say anything for a moment. We stood in the entry hall of the house that was mine, in the quiet that belonged to a space that had just been cleared of something that had been in it too long. "You whispered something at dinner," I said, "before you slid the portfolio over." "Be careful, my lioness," she said. "This gift is a key to your freedom, and a test to see who bites your hand." She had said it quietly enough that only I had heard it. I had not understood it fully in the moment. I had been looking at the portfolio, at the name in bold letters, at the number that my brain was struggling to make real. "They bit within the hour," I said. "They did," she said. She sounded neither surprised nor satisfied. People reveal themselves when resources appear. The only variable is the speed. "You knew," I said. "You knew what they would do." "I knew what they had been doing," she said. 3 years of it. "I was waiting to see whether you were ready." I looked at her. "What made you decide tonight?" She was quiet for a moment. "The dinner last month," she said. "Julian's colleague's promotion celebration. You were at the far end of the table, cutting your food into small pieces and answering questions that hadn't been directed at you and staying small so no one would have a reason to comment." She paused. "You had stopped existing in rooms that you were physically physically present in. That is not something I was willing to watch continue. I thought about 3 years of that, about somewhat presentable, and the chuckle and the phone. I don't know how to run a hotel, I said. You didn't know how to run a household either, she said. You learned that. That's different. It's exactly the same, she said. Both require understanding what a space is for and what it needs and who the right people are to help you manage it. You have the judgment. You need the knowledge and the staff. She looked at me. I'll give you 6 months before you stop needing me to answer questions. 3, I said. She smiled. The real smile, not the public warmth, not the social performance, but the one that belonged to the room between us, that had always been there since I was 20 years old, and she had appeared with the specific calm of someone who knew what the situation required and had decided to provide it. I want to tell you what came after, because the after is where this story actually lives. The divorce was filed on a Tuesday morning, 14 days after my birthday dinner. Julian retained counsel. 2 attorneys, which I understand from Hargrove suggested a contested approach, and then, after Hargrove provided a preliminary outline of the asset documentation, retained different counsel. The second counsel was not aggressive. The proceedings took 4 months. I retained Hargrove's firm and a family law specialist named Patricia Ossie, 22 years in family and marital property law, who reviewed the trust documents and the company records and told me in our first meeting he has no claim to anything structured before the marriage, and the marriage itself produced no joint assets of record. This is as clean as these things get. It was as clean as these things get. I took possession of the Vance Grand Hotel on a Wednesday morning in December, in a formal ceremony that required approximately 45 minutes of document review, and a signature and a photograph that Vivian insisted on taking with the phone she carries specifically for occasions she intends to remember. The hotel has a general manager, Marcus Chen, who has been with Vivian for 16 years and who looked at me on the first day with the specific assessment of someone who is evaluating whether the new person is worth his full professional effort. I asked him in our first meeting to tell me the 3 things he was most concerned about in the hotel's current operational structure. He told me. I asked follow-up questions. He answered them. At the end of the meeting, he said, "You asked better questions than I expected." I had a good teacher, I said. Vivian had taught me many things across many years. The most important one was not the hotel or the house or the trust structure or any of the material things that appeared in the Burgundy portfolio. It was the one she had been demonstrating since I was 20 years old, that the answer to being underestimated is not to prove yourself to the people who underestimate you. The answer is to build the thing they don't know about, and to be ready when the moment arrives. I had not known I was building anything. She had known. That is the difference between someone who survives and someone who plans. The hotel had 247 rooms, a ballroom that seated 400, a restaurant on the 41st floor with a view of Lake Michigan that I stood at the window of on a Thursday evening in January, after the last of the day's meetings, and looked out at for a long time. I thought about the night of my birthday, about the Burgundy portfolio sliding across the white tablecloth, about Julian's eyes when he looked up from his phone, about Constance on the Persian rug, pearls in hand, one eye cracking open to evaluate the landscape. I thought about the door clicking shut. The house was mine. The hotel was mine. And for the first time in 3 years, in the specific quiet of a 41st floor restaurant on a January evening, with the city laid out below me like a document I was finally learning to read, so was I.